Well, let's take you to Sydney now, and we've got the Roosters head of performance, Simon Jones, who joins us. Jonesy, good to have you. Now, we'll do the precursor to start with. You're at your daughter's athletics meeting or something? What's going on?
Yeah, correct, mate. Not too many days off, so you try and make sure you're a decent dad when you get the opportunity. So yeah, she's at her zone champs, mate. So beautiful day for her.
So she a bit of a chip off the old block, eh? She's got a bit of the Jones fast twitch fibres in her, has she?
Who knows, yet to be seen. Today could be the proving ground for that, mate. So whether we go and buy some spikes, we'll wait and see. But mate, she's having some fun, and it's, as I say, enjoying a day with her friends. So that's the best bit.
Yeah, good stuff, mate. Hey, listen, awesome to have you on, and a really good chance to tell the story about what you've been up to. So tell us, NRL head of performance for the Sydney Roosters. I guess the jumping off point for us probably best is to give us a bit of an overview in terms of what exactly that role is.
Yeah, so I guess the reason I decided to jump ship from the Highlanders, I was obviously really happy there. It's our home franchise, so that's always special, and was happy there and not looking to leave. I think, we're in a good spot of building there, but opportunity sort of presented to have a look at this side of the ditch, and the role I think which enticed me over was just probably the breadth of what you're looking at. So head of performance, I guess, as it would look like on an org chart, as I sit across the medical team, the strength conditioning coaches, sports scientists, and the dietitians. So my role is to sort of facilitate that team, align them as close as I can to the footy program. And what I've really been enjoying about the role, and possibly one of the reasons I came, was my conversations with Robbo, Trent Robinson, who's the head coach. So really enjoying sort of forging that partnership, and to be honest, I've been on a very, very steep learning curve about NRL footy and what it's all about.
So did you know Trent Robinson before this opportunity come up?
No, mate, it was completely out of the blue, actually.
Mm. And I guess it comes with a bit of pressure, isn't it? Because the Roosters, there's never a rebuilding year or a phase at the Roosters, is it? It's aiming to high all of the time, and I guess that comes with some added pressure, I suppose.
Yeah, it's been interesting actually, because their tag, their hashtag for a lot of their social media is "We Win Premierships." But I think if they're honest with themselves, if they were honest with themselves, they hadn't won one for 5 or 6 years, and last year they finished 7th. So I think kudos to the club. They sort of said, they're people that look to be courageous and ambitious, and they've fished out a guy from Rugby Union in Dunedin to maybe come and give them a fresh set of eyes.
Just how steep has that learning curve been, Jonesy? Like, did you just sort of have a layman's knowledge of the NRL going into this?
Yeah, if I'm honest, I did, mate. So, they asked me that, and I sort of joked around the back, when Jared McCracken was playing for Canterbury, Brent Todd for Canberra, and Reggie for Manly was when I first started watching footy. But I didn't have a team I followed. If there was a game on after Super Footy, I'd watch it. But I guess way back in my netball days, once you get an appreciation of the sport, you start to understand it better, and you learn those intricacies, and then you really start to enjoy it. And the NRL has been the same. So I think, to refer back to your learning curve, pre-season's pre-season. I had to learn a little bit, and I had to ask a lot of questions. And in season, to be honest, I've actually stood back a long way, because it'd be fairly remiss of me to try and start telling them how to do their game weeks and situations until I'd actually seen a bit of it. So starting to feel a little bit more comfy now as we get to the end of the regular season in terms of what I'm seeing and what I think we need to be doing. But there's been a lot of I don't knows and what would you do here, a lot of asking questions. So it has been a really steep learning curve, if I'm honest. It's been really enjoyable.
Because what sort of staff are you dealing with there? You talk about the different divisions that you're across. What is that number in terms of head count, and how's that gone from a people management point of view?
Yeah, great question, really, because that's the role, and that's been the challenge. Is in rugby union, you're a little bit more hands on everything. So you might have your conversation with your head coach and manager, and you can probably go in action 70 to 80% of what you needed to change. Whereas here, I'm sort of dealing with 10 staff that are amazingly experienced in their areas. That have got years more experience than I have in their niches. So people management part's huge. And I've really been enjoying it. And as I say, it's more just trying to align them with Robbo's vision and take a lot of those conversations off his hands. So there's a part of that where you are a bit of a middleman, and there's a part of that where you're exercising patience and a few other things, and having to I guess learn a lot in that space has been some of the steepness as well.
The one thing with the NRL, it's such a long and tough competition, isn't it? There's just very few breaks, or if any breaks really, the odd bye week. But the balancing, and I guess your role in this is huge about, one, keeping the guys conditioning, but also needing to assure that they can get to the end of the season and come the pointy season and be ready to go.
Yeah, mate, and that's the part I've loved. And we did pre-season really differently. Luke Keary's joking that I've retired him from the NRL because of how hard it was. He said, if that's what we've got to do, he goes, I'm done. He's actually obviously just signed with a deal in France at the end, but he's a hard case. He's joked about that. But the pre-season was enjoyable. It was a change. The guys have got a real resiliency to a high workload. Some of the acute bouts of stuff is different to rugby union, but the volume that they're prepared to do, the wrestle that they do is amazing. It's like an hour at a time, which is a near game intensity heart rate. So I had to learn that a lot, Sav. And then where my learnings have probably been is a lot of the things I thought were missing, that in the back of my mind I was thinking maybe we implement that in 2025, maybe we add. I'm probably seeing, we don't need it because the season's so long. Some things I'm seeing is the NRL player takes a little bit longer to recover from the game to the rugby union players. So your expectation earlier in the week is slightly different. But also the way we've trained the structure a little bit differently, and it seems to be at the moment. Fingers crossed, mate, that's holding our condition and things that we did at the start of the year. So that's, as you allude to, mate, it's probably the biggest part of my role is that squad load management and making sure we're there. And we'll see how we go, mate, whether I've got a job next year, whether I'm doing any good or not.
Have there been other things that have really surprised you, Jonesy?
Yeah, mate, I've loved learning about the ruck and the tackle, because you sort of just used to think it was just, try and stop the guy and go down. But it's, in terms of rugby union, it's similar in a way that if you can slow down their ruck and speed up your own, it adds to the success of the game. But watching the wrestle sessions, how they try to get handles and hold, the way they're trying to contort their body and turn. And when you start seeing some of that stuff affect the play, that's been part of it. And I guess, rugby union, you get a chance to reset, kicking the ball out, go back to a system and structure, whereas, you make an error here, you're just straight back on defence and you're in that hole and you've just got to go back to that system so quickly. So, yeah, mate, as I say, I've been enjoying learning those intricacies of it and gaining a far greater appreciation from it.
I'd hazard a guess that the rugby league athlete has probably changed quite markedly over recent years as well too. They've sped the game up. That 6 again rule has fundamentally changed the game, I would think, in terms of from an athletic perspective. Is that the case?
Yeah, it definitely has. Yeah, You've got obviously guys that can play, in the back row and then go out and fill in the centres. So apart from your spine guys and a couple of sort of traditional props, the rest of them are, pretty unique across, and they can play a number of positions, and some of them are amazing, and they can very quickly in a game get shifted from, position in the forwards back row to out in the middles and centres, and they're doing pretty well.
You mentioned earlier, netball, I suppose, and it'd be just a good point to look at the journey that you've, starting from South, Invercargill lad, now head of performance at the Roosters, but just that journey. Where did it all start for you, and was it those early days with the Steel and the Stags, I suppose, that's got you that opportunities? Yeah, mate. It's actually, I think, a quite cool way to start. Like, there's, I was teaching at the time, and Steve Jackson obviously was working with cricket, doing a little bit of netball, and he'd just sort of watch me as a student, and then do a little bit of assistance with some speed work with him as with the Sting, I think it was still then before the Steel. So he had me volunteering there, mate, and that was probably my first little in. And then Peter Scout, once the role came up at Rugby Southland, when they needed someone there, I was a bit of a broken hack, trying to think I was a player and not making it. And then a couple of weeks later, I was, doing the S&C work. And again, I was very fortunate to have a couple of guys like that were prepared to, put your name forward and give you backing. So, yeah, we'll start back at the Stags.
I guess that's sort of mirrored a little bit too, Jonesy, by your sporting career, which was probably one of the more varied and unique sort of journeys as well. Yeah, I guess so, mate. Like, loving being at the athletics track today, because that was obviously the first passion. And mate was probably pretty happy with how that went, but got a pretty stark realisation that once you get out of Australasia, there's some pretty fast people out there. So it was a pretty easy decision after sort of reaching my pinnacle, mate, to look at a few other things. And rugby is most kids' New Zealand passion. So returned to that late, mate, with a real fear of the high ball and some pretty dodgy hands for the first years was okay to come back to. I do have to say though, I've still got memories of you running sprints down at Connon Street, and
that's just unfair, isn't it?
As a very slow tight forward, just looking up from the next sprint and realising that you've probably already done about 3 or 4 in front of me. Though it's just not fair having a sprinter get into that sort of environment.
Yeah, I think, mate. But as you see, plenty, mate. There's I guess the physiologic athletic potential, and then there's some skill, and there was one I was pretty lacking in there for a fair while.
You would have won a Galbraith Shield title with Blues, did you?
Yep, mate. No, I had sort of 2 there. I watched both of them, mate, from the sideline. The bones were a bit chalky, actually. So both years I was, I think, on the sideline. So yeah, we had 2 there, and I think if we sort of move forward to the Stags days, it's something I refer to like really fondly. Like worked all over the world now in some different teams, and one thing we achieved there was still what teams at a really high level are trying to achieve, like Nibs and Goof there at the time, the environment and the players we had, I guess the consistency of the squad. We had a number of 50 and 100 gamers, from a different range. And really how everyone bought in and played and tackled for each other. That era we sort of had of, coming from 12th or 14th in the competition to the Ranfurly Shield era. And around there, it was actually something I still look at really fondly, because with a whole lot more experience in my pocket, and I guess there's different levels of accountability now of how we're looking at things, but some of the basic fundamentals of team values and how we performed, it was a squad that was actually living a lot of that all the way back then.
Now, you've been a bit humble too, Jonesy, because we're missing out the bit where you were blistering the boards at the Velodrome as well. And I mean, cycling's probably something, if you had it discovered it a wee bit earlier, could have been somewhere where you could have gone as well.
Mate, I thought that myself. I loved the cycling community and how passionate they were to get behind us. And a couple of the guys that were cycling, were happy to throw me their $3,000 wheels and aero helmets, mate, so I could have a bit of a crack. So, but it's something I love and gained a real appreciation of it, which was cool. And I think, mate, probably would have suited me more than trying to be a track and field sprinter if I'd had that time. But, mate, love seeing what New Zealand's doing with that and what the Velodrome did for Southland and Invercargill. And mate was happy to have a crack and be scared out of my pants, mate, trying to go around there early on. But no, it was a lot of fun. And it sort of got to a point, I guess, where do I carry on and have another crack at sport, or by that stage career was starting to sort of rear its head a wee bit as something a bit more serious. So that was sort of where we decided to go there.
Does all that variety, I guess, does that lead you to be open to these challenges, or I guess to have a unique sort of understanding of the athlete's mindset?
Yeah, I think it does, mate. Like I read a cool thing the other day around it's we all say you learn from your experiences. You don't really learn from your experiences. You learn reflecting on those and what you learned. And I think that's a cool way to distinguish with for that saying. But understanding how wattages work, bikes are such a big part of how we perform with athletes now, and understanding sort of an insight into how that was programmed, what it was like, and how it's worked. It's something I use with sports teams maybe more than others, and I think part of that, mate, is coming down to that understanding. Stealing stuff from netball around all the landing mechanics we did for ACL prevention, which I found were really good for athletic potential and agility. Mate, that sort of laced through when I went to Japan. We did heaps of that with the up squad. Did a lot of that with the Highlanders, and slowly implementing some of that stuff here with the Roosters as well.
What was it like coming into that first pre-season with the Roosters? Because obviously you, I'm presuming, wouldn't have known any of the players, and they wouldn't have known you. And I don't know, was there nerves to come into that environment? And did you feel like you had to potentially prove yourself to some of those players?
Yes. And to be honest, the best way to probably get them on side and earn their trust is to get them some results. But also for them to see that you're fair and accountable across all players. And that's something that I've been really fortunate to learn from great coaches throughout my career in different teams. No matter how they are, I've sort of been able to bring it to that. But yeah, you rock up, mate, and on day one you're being introduced to these names, and all of a sudden you realise maybe I'm a bit more of a league fan than I realised. You've got Jake Friend, Boyd Cordner, who are helping out as coaches, and then you're meeting James Tedesco, who's your Australian captain and one of your best known players in the game. Cooper Cronk, resource coach, comes over, and as you're sort of getting introduced to these people, you're sort of like, well, actually, I'm pretty familiar with their careers a lot more, and I guess that sort of started to be for a person that wasn't a huge NRL follower. You realise just how much of a sort of a global brand the sport is, and it's a pretty cool competition to be in.
I remember reading a bit earlier in the season from a Roosters point of view, and I think it was Teddy Tedesco actually that did make the point of just how different a pre-season it was, particularly for some of those older guys. So tell us a little bit about that, about what you walked into, and then I guess almost something that sounds like it was a bit of a conscious decision on your behalf to maybe hold some of the more senior guys a bit more to account. Would that be fair?
Yeah, it's pretty accurate, mate, to be honest. Learned a bit of that from, as I say, like from some good coaches where they sort of explain the importance of that. Jamie Joseph and some examples, previous coaches in other sports and things as well. It was more around, I guess, a little bit of a point of difference. And I'd been in for the last 2 weeks of their previous season. So got to see them lose to the Storm, and then I was in the finals, and I was in the reviews. But what I noticed, mate, was a few of those guys are wrapped in cotton wool. And I don't think anyone's fault. They didn't have a heated performance for a year. They tried to see what it would be like if other people just, I guess, picked up those pieces. But if there's someone that's not, I guess, non-biased and objective to put the full stop at the end of the sentence, it was hard for some of those people to make a call on, a yes and a no decision. So the easy part, mate, was I just met with the senior players, Joe Manu's, Tedesco's and that, and said, how are you feeling? Where do you think your career's at? And they were both really positive, and just as a couple of the examples. And then we just sort of spoke about, hey, well, when you're on, you're on. And to be fair, both of them were pretty much no modifications all pre-season, trained amazingly well on a couple of our fittest guys. And they've been playing that way this year, which is pretty cool.
Are you ensconced on the eastern beaches, Jonesy? How's Sydney life treating you?
First and foremost, Sydney's pretty expensive. That's the first thing. But no, like my wife's done a really good job getting the kids into, similar activities, their gymnastics, their schooling. And I think that's the reason I bring up that balance first is none of that's going to work. Sydney could be the best city in the world, but unless you can sort of get that balance with family working well, it's tough. But no, it's been good. The club, in terms of the family support, have been great. And then, mate, like today's a nice, cool 26 degrees clear. And we're almost back at the beach already, I think. So there's some upside for that. And, a couple of kids, mate, with Southland genes and been living in Dunedin, they appreciate the warmer water for sure. So there's some definite upside there.
I want to dig into the Japanese experience for you as well too, because talk to me about that. Being involved, obviously under someone like Jamie who led that program and the development opportunity there. But I get that must have been a massive foundational piece, I guess, for this launching pad into the role that you're in now. That experience for 3 years in Japan?
Yeah, just over 3.5. So it was a gamble. I was quite happy at HBS&Z, but I felt team sport was where I was a natural. I was trying to move up within high performance sport New Zealand, but they sort of viewed me through a team lens, which was fine. So sort of too early. I was being pushed into sort of some middle management style roles, and there was something there that I just, if a change came, it would have been great. And then Jamie walked down the corridor in Dunedin, and we'd never worked together before. Didn't have a relationship, but obviously my time spent with Nibs, who's one of his mates, and then Dave Rennie in the New Zealand 20s. I know he phoned both of them. So mate, it was a gamble from us both because he didn't know me, I didn't know him. And if I was to fast forward, we failed in our first year and a half there, and there was some pretty honest conversations, as you can imagine. And it was just there was challenges there that we didn't know, but that sort of made the whole experience so much sweeter because once we sort of saw where we needed to go, we got some traction. And then probably about 18 months out from the World Cup, we could see that that we really had the group of players, we had the trust that we're starting to achieve really well. And you take sort of, I guess, Jamie's accountability and ability to manage a motivated squad, and then you get Brownie's sort of genius in terms of how he wanted that team to play. That gave me a fairly clear direction of where they needed to go. And after a pretty challenging first 18 months, had sort of earned the trust by the end to put a plan together. And you chuck in some names like Scotty Hansen and stuff in there, man. I was really fortunate to be with an amazing group of people. I know you guys have had Macca on, but we won't mention him too much. And then obviously what we achieved in its home country, with probably the squad we achieved was awesome. Like you left there with a real buzz. Guys had played great rugby. The country got behind it. It was sort of the product we wanted to achieve. And as I say, from when we started, a lot of people sort of thought it was plain sailing. But, there's a pretty dark sort of 12, 18 months when we first got there. And, similar to here, you've sometimes got to take those leaps of faith. You've got to go pretty dark and uncomfortable at times, and hopefully you come out the other end.
What did you learn in those 18 months, Jonesy?
This won't be a shock. I speak too much, obviously. You go over there and, I probably rated myself as a coach where it was your ability to communicate and know your athlete. And so data and the number crunching and the science, even though I was a practitioner of that, it's definitely not my default strength. So going over there, not being able to speak the language with the players, you had to use your numbers and your data. Obviously, I was using a translator, so I had to be really concise with my words. Couldn't be normally me and tell lots of stories and try and get a rapport through that style. So it was really quite cool coming back, and I do believe it shaped the way that I now coach around just an awareness of what's direct coaching and what can probably be parked and things. So I really got challenged around, I guess, as I say, my default characteristics of where I needed to grow that strength. And I think in our roles, you've got a continuum where one end you can be totally science-based, it's data, it's numbers, and you live and breathe that. And the other end is, you're a people person with a great ability to, get people on board, get their rapport, get their trust, get their love. And throughout our careers, we're all going to move across that continuum. And I don't think there's a right end or a wrong end in saying that, but I just think that's a cool part of the journey of sort of how to reflect on it. And when I went to Japan, I got put down the other end of the continuum, which was really, really good for me. And, you learn some skills and you learn to work in ways that you possibly hadn't prior to that. So, and as I mentioned, the pressure for the first 18 months, really created and drove me to be a better coach, if I'm honest.
That is a long way to be from home when things aren't going that well, and 18 months is a fairly long period.
Yeah, so like the family in the first 12 months, we did the Sunwolves as well as the international team. So in my first year in Japan, I lived in a hotel for 11 months because the Sunwolves as a team don't necessarily, have a home base. All the players live in a hotel. So, yeah, so the family stayed at home for the first sort of year and a bit. And then once I sort of got established, we got them over. But, yeah, half the time I'd be at the southern end of Japan rather than Tokyo and things. So, yeah, there's a lot of time away from the family and balance. And I think that makes it all that little bit sweeter, that those sacrifices, if you do manage to put a nice plan together and get some success at the end of it, you do reflect back on that and really appreciate the sacrifice that they sort of make for that.
I'm interested in that data versus the people side of things, right? So that's kind of the art versus the science piece. And
yeah.
Where do you think now, with all of that experience, like what's the ratio? Is it a 50-50, 60-40? How would you script it out? I know it's probably every individual case specific, but what's your sort of take on it generally, mate?
Yeah, I think the easiest way for me to explain that is if you take the Japanese example of going and having a squad of sometimes up to 60, not being able to speak their language, back to the Southern Steel, you have a squad of 12 and you spend a lot of time with them. It's easy, like it's going to be situation dependent.
Yep.
And I think you need the blend of both. And once you get to where you are, you've got to see that. But if I use my current example, you alluded to it earlier, there's really good staff here, a number of staff. So for me, I don't have to be the expert, nor do I want to be the expert in their field. That's for them to be. So for me, it's much more of the art. So at the moment, I'm listening to the senior players, what they're liking about the training week, what they're not. We're getting challenged around, hey, what they need and what they don't need. And it's your role to facilitate those discussions, take those to Robbo. You're then facilitating, the plan with the coaches and trying to get your little wins. So at the moment, I'm much more, I guess, in probably the art, but then on the 30% of data I am looking at is really heavily underpinned, because that's the part where I'm trying to hold the whole team together and run the program underneath that. But within that, the brilliant minds in the S&C team, they've got their stuff. The sports scientist is doing all the donkey work for me, and then you've got this really great medical team keeping the guys on the field. So you leave them to be the best in their field, and you become a little bit more of an overseer and facilitator, and making sure are they getting what they need. Have they got the resource they need? Have they got time? Have they got issues? And then if not, that's for you to go and try and make sure that they're getting the best of what they need as well.
You've obviously been already in some big special sporting moments throughout your career today, but I imagine going into a final series with what is a pretty big club in Sydney, plenty of media attention, I'd imagine. But what is it like? What's that feeling like to be able to all of a sudden go find yourself in a couple of weeks out from a NRL final series?
Yeah, it's a bit surreal. Like when I started, the season just seemed so long and so far away that I was kind of like, wow, this is I've got so much to learn and so much to do, and all of a sudden it's upon us, and you're sort of looking at, okay, we've had a pretty successful season from a squad health point of view. We've been resilient. Our players have been highly selectable, which is great in terms of an injury perspective. So you sort of get to that point and look at that, and then, you start thinking, okay, finals, what does that look like? And I guess for me, when you spend a lot of time with the team and you know people personally, there's that shared collective. I'm obviously still developing that because I'm one of the newer people in the building, obviously. So it's a lot around, looking what does it mean to them? How are they steeling themselves and coming together? And obviously I have my levels of excitement, but I think that's the beauty of team sport is, what does it mean to the individual and the collective? We've got a couple of key players that have done an amazing, service for the Roosters over a long, long time. It's their last season, and I know, mate, a lot of the club and players would love to send them off with, with the best results possible, but it all comes down to your performance, doesn't it? So yeah.
We mentioned Macca before, Jonesy, and we've been lucky to have Jason Price on here as well, and even I think about Atipa Mabonga that we've had on the pod as well before. We've got Southlanders in the back office staff of some teams. It's really unique and high profile leagues and that sort of thing. Like it can't be a coincidence. Can you sort of put your finger on why Southlanders are doing so well in these roles?
Yeah. Probably a lot of people laugh at this, but I guess especially with me and Macca, but you actually sort of put your personality aside and you're used to working and picking up the detail, doing that wider stuff, being a little bit across everything because you've never been the most resourced in Southland. So the thing you do is you don't get so caught up on the elite detail because you realise that you either can't execute with that or you just don't have the time and resource to put into that. So you very quickly become a good practitioner at what actually works, what can I put my time into, and then also because you are, expected to pick up the detail and work across, and I was probably pretty humbled with Nibs and Goof as my first coaches. Like they certainly made sure my feet were on the ground on a daily basis. And as much of a joke that is, I think that's why some of the Southland people get to that. It's part of our culture of people down there. Is it's not really who you know, it's who you are. People will judge you on your character. If things go tough, we are people that will sort of hopefully work smarter, but we definitely work harder as well. Like we will muck in and we will get things done. We won't throw other people under the bus. We don't sort of shirk our responsibilities. We've sort of been brought up with that idea of, humble hard work. And I think, if some of the people you mentioned and their names, I think that would go a long way to that.
Mm. Yourself and I'm thinking Doc Finlayson and Macca and even Barrow there at the point did very well in positioning himself at working out the camera angles of games, but you haven't managed to grab the tee for the Roosters. Are you going to sort that out?
I purposely, mate, tried to keep the bald head off TV, but in the Stag days for sure, we had a weekly meeting to see who got the most DT time, and you could, it was an easy thing. But you have a yellow jersey, orange jersey, blue jersey in the footy. And if I'm totally honest, mate, I haven't studied my papers to do that.
Right.
Didn't want to be out there and in the way, but it is something, mate, that I eventually might fall into. So, yeah.
You've kind of in some ways gone, and I say this with love, of course, from sort of the outhouse to the penthouse, really. When you think about, the Stags, which is the old number 8 wide mentality and getting the most out of, not the greatest of resources, to kind of the Roosters in a glamour club situation, which I'd imagine, and you might be able to give us some insight here, mate, is reasonably well resourced behind the scenes. Give us your thoughts there on those two comparisons that might be at either end of the scale.
Yeah, no, for sure. We've got an interesting setup, if I'm 100% honest. We have decided to be out of Allianz Stadium, so our home stadium, and we're on a mezzanine level in there, and it is a beautiful facility, and it's great for the club. It's got a great frontage, but in terms of performance, there's a few things around that. We don't train on Allianz, so we do have a short walk to our training facility and field, which I know this sounds quite minor, but some of the other teams here do have purpose-built facilities. So we certainly don't want for resource, but we want for space, if that makes sense.
Right.
And in terms of how your day would run perfectly and be set up, most teams have these purpose-built facilities where you move out your doors from your medical, from whatever, and you're straight on your training field, which saves time on seat. And the eastern suburbs is a beautiful place to live, and the boys like being there, but it comes with a lot of other challenges around logistics. But beautiful brand new facility, and yes, much different in terms of, we have our own plunge pools, we have a squirrel pool, we have a lap pool, so we're pretty fortunate.
Right, breaking news. We have paused the podcast just for a moment to allow Jonesy to watch the daughter run. You better tell us her name and give us the rundown on the race, mate.
Yeah, so Phoebe, mate, she's in the elite levels of under nines, boy, the early start. But no, she ran well. She's in a mix up there at the front. We'll see what the photo comes through with.
Oh, gee.
Photo finish.
Hold all tickets.
Yeah, there we go.
For the minor placings, but mate, no. So I'm just stoked, mate, that she ran through the line. That was Dad's coaching tool. So try to leave it to it. Hard when you get a bit easy though. It's only the parenting thing, isn't it?
Not easy, mate. Not easy. Hey, so the real piece that I was really keen to touch on is just, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, like just the physical nature of an NRL season. And just managing guys and managing recovery. I mean, that talk to me about how different that is in just such a physical game.
Yeah, it's crazy, mate, because you've got state of origin, right? And guys will play at the highest level, the pinnacle of their sport, and then be happy to play 2 days later. And it's just a different mindset. Like, you think of an All Black playing a test match and you want them to, front up for the Highlanders 2 days later. It's a really different mindset. But the hard case thing is, that's because they love to play, but, you do try and train them hard like that a day or two after, and it is a little bit different. So the recovery is really more around how you build your weekend and how you structure your training. So that's been a big part of these guys are pretty professional, as I say. Our facility, where we touched on last, was sort of like, it's got a good recovery suite in there. We provide massage. We've actually got a Therabody room that's sponsored with, lazy boys for the guys, with the compression boots, Normatex they're called, where they have things. So we do have a high level of recovery there, but yeah, a lot of it's their mindset. And an interesting take, which a lot of you guys who understand rugby union, is we've got a really short turnaround after this game against Canberra into the Rabbits, and we'll actually give the guys 2 days off, and then we will do effectively like 2 days out from the game. And rugby union's always your highest training. We'll give them sort of like an orientation to what we want for the week, and then on captain's run, which is the day before, which historically in most sports, including ours, is really, really light, we'll actually do a 1+. So we sort of build into the game, if that makes sense. So we're sort of going to go, right, prioritise recovery, give them a couple of days off, let them, freshen up a little bit, and then launch into the end of the week a little bit and build up with the game being the pinnacle. So we certainly won't train to the same level of intensity. But yeah, that's a lot of how I've noticed that the NRL will manage. It's around, your days. We're in the eastern suburbs. Some of our guys do travel from the inner west and can be in a car for a long time. So if you can keep someone, off a 2-hour car trip maybe for some of the guys and staff, it actually has a really big effect. So a lot of it's around logistics and your overall planning and where can you give them a break, where can you not, because we had a really unique season, which is working well for us now. Is we actually went, if you include the 2 pre-season sort of rounds, we went sort of 15 rounds without a bye. It's nearly a whole Super Rugby competition, in a pretty heavy sort of collision sport. So there's definitely been learnings on that of how to do that recovery right and get it there. And as I say, the key part it falls back is getting our days right, giving them space to themselves with their families. Similar to premiership rugby players, if they're in and around for 40 odd weeks of the year, you've got to make sure that their time off is valued. So quite early in the year, we gave them 2 full pre-seasons off, pre-seasons, bye weeks. And then one of the other bye weeks, we had a little bit of a camp. So, we've been pretty strategic around that.
I don't know if you want to do this, but is there a player that's just an absolute animal with his training and just goes all day that has surprised you a little bit?
There's guys that probably go both ways. Like it's like Victor Radley's one that's I think I got asked in a previous podcast around who was the fittest. It might have actually been Roosters Radio. They have their official own podcast radio, and they sort of said who's the fittest. And Sammy Walker would run our best yo-yo. Everyone's pretty familiar with that. It's a fitness test, but he's a lighter, slighter guy. You'd expect that. But if you look at what Victor Radley would sort of do in training, how much work he gets through, what he does in the game, and he is fit. But the guy's just constantly banged up, bashed up, and sore. But he goes out each weekend and just and does a really high job in terms of his work rate. And because he's playing sort of in the back row, he's not like a prop where he's coming off and getting breathers during the game the majority of the time. So he's the guy that if I would sort of say, work rate, if I look at how sore he is and then what he goes out and does each weekend, that sort of stuff's pretty impressive. But no, there's some amazing athletes in there. Obviously, we've got Dom Young on the wing, who obviously is lightning fast. That's his superpower. You've got Sammy Walker, who's aerobically really, really fit, and then you've got a guy like Angus Crichton, who and the way he's playing, represents who he is as an athlete. He's really strong and powerful and very fit. So he's a guy that he was probably almost MVP of pre-season. He didn't actually start our first game. He played the Reggie's Cup, and then mate, he's played his way and just been amazing. And you're really pumped for a guy like that because he really chased pre-season. He knew it was a big year for him, and he put a heap of work, and mate, it's come out really well. So you love when you see an athlete get rewarded for their work.
I guess on the flip side of that, there'd be no space anymore, surely, for a Cliffy Lyons, a couple of durries, and a big bot in the changing rooms afterwards.
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem to be too much, mate. So like, obviously, there's times where, as I say, your calendar allows for it, and you've got a longer turnaround or a time off, and the guys still enjoy a beer, but our team would probably be 50-50. There's probably half our team don't drink actually. Some of those I just don't drink in season. Others they just don't drink, for cultural and lifestyle choices. So yeah, we're sort of 50-50 in that space. But yeah, haven't said I've been able to bump a dart off anyone.
I wanted to Jared Wairea Hargraves. Just tell us about the man. Last month he becomes the most capped rooster of all time, which, given the iconic history of the club, is just a phenomenal achievement. I mean, tell me a little bit about him, as a person, and also as obviously an incredible foundational block of the club.
Yeah, so Jazz, beautiful bloke. Obviously, we see what we see on the field, and I think one of the things we celebrated the most, which was really emotional, was around to him to play his position and to play at his style and be as physical as he is, and he's done that from day one of his career. Really, really impressive to see, because he just does it with such I'm going to use words like savagery and intent, but he's also one of the people that first made me feel most welcome. Really great listener, and really caring family man. So when he's on the field and he steps across that white line, he is just ruthless. He maintains the standard, but also how he trains. His line speed at training is phenomenal, until he's maybe blown up, but he's going to give you his best each time. He brings an intensity. Yep, sometimes his contact level is right on sort of the border of where you want it, but it's also the role he's been given by the club. The club asked him to be, that guy. They asked him to be that person. And as you say, the Roosters are the only team in the competition that have 4 guys that have played 300 plus. And I think Jazza would have played over 400 if you took out a few of the suspensions and the odd injury.
Yeah.
But no, he's great, as I say. I love watching him train. I love the intensity he brings to that. And he is a pro. So you talk about recovery. He's in doing his mobility and his stretching. And I'm sure he's a lot better than that, like all athletes are at the end of their career. They know it's more important for them. But yeah, he's one of the guys that's, and on his days off, he's in early, he's getting his work done. And on top of that, he's got 3 kids and a wife, and balances all that really, really well.
It's a great comp, it really is, and I think as a spectacle, particularly from a TV point of view, NRL finals would have to be the top of the shelf in terms of actual spectacle. So, like we were saying before, now you're going to be in the sharp end of it. What do you think, mate? Have you've got your crew's got a good chance at having a good crack at this thing?
I'd like to think so. We know what we're chasing. We've almost set some attacking records this year, and we know we can score tries. And anyone that does follow the game will know that we also leak a few, and even a few of the commentators, which we've been using for a bit of ammo the last few weeks, have sort of said, but when the pressure comes on, they're also happy to leak a couple. But we know what we're chasing, and we know that we're right on the cusp of that. So I think we've put ourselves in a really good position. It's not like we've had to chase the finals. We've been sort of there or thereabouts, from starting really, really well, which historically has been a little bit of an issue for us.
Yeah.
And I think because you take some of those pressures off the season, and yes, we've dropped a couple that we probably shouldn't have, that consistency, I think, will put us in a good spot. But, mate, as you say, it's an amazing competition. The Tigers can jump up and beat someone on their day, and that's, I think, the beauty of it. You see Leichhardt Oval absolutely packed out to watch the team that's 17 out of 17. That loyalty of the fan base reminds me of when the NPC back home was at its peak. 14 teams playing, in a little bit more of a professional comp than what it is now with your midweek games. But yeah, the patriotism for the fans, it's we're at training and people are abusing us, as they're driving past down the street, and then you got people, then you got people cheering for you, in the next breath. So it's you sort of love seeing that parochialism, that patriotism. But it is a cool comp for, as I say, the fact that you have a slightly off day and one of the low teams will grab you, and the top teams are just so consistent, and that's your challenge.
So answer me this: what would be the most passionate fan base? Would it be Japanese rugby at a home Rugby World Cup, Would it be Sydney City Roosters faithful or the terraces at Rugby Park? How would you rate them?
Having been on the terraces at Rugby Park and knowing what sort of crowd we were, I'd say in terms of showing up with numbers and wearing colours and things, mate, obviously the Japanese were probably next to none. Maybe not, the most vocal and supportive until they're just applauding something that happens, because obviously that's their respectful culture and nature that they have.
Yeah.
I think the Sydney Roosters, mate, if I was to throw it out there, the Swans are doing so well this year. I think we've lost a few to the AFL. Because you go to some of the other grounds and their fans are amazing. Like, you're playing at Newcastle, playing a lot of the places, and their fans are amazing. And I do think, one, we've obviously got a slightly bigger stadium than a few of the others. But the Roosters are pretty cool. But our Anzac Day game that we had against the Dragons, Jazz's 307, like, they were amazing. The crowd was awesome, and the way the club put it on was pretty cool, mate. So they all have their positives, mate. I'll sit on the fence for this one.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because there's some fond memories, mate, of standing in the rain, hail, and sleet on the side of Rugby Park terraces.
What's the plan, Jonesy? After it's not a really very fair question because you haven't been over there for that long. But what would the next chapter be for you? Are you going to be there for a while?
Yeah, well, I alluded to the fact that I didn't want to come and sort of be a quick flash in the pan, because the challenges they said the club had and the change they wanted, I sort of said, look, that doesn't sound like something you can fix in a year or two. And I said, look, if I'm relocating the family, uprooting the wife from her job and her friends and what she loves for, I don't know how many times it is in my career now, but it's not always that fair. So you wanted to make sure that it was worth it. So there's definitely there's a future here for the next couple of years. But the idea, which was to come and see, hey, how does it look, and does the NRL really grab me? Does that become the passion, and do we look what we can achieve here, or is it the reason for coming for a different role that I couldn't get in New Zealand at this stage? In Super Rugby was to get that growth as a practitioner, try and put another few strings in your bow. Come and learn some new things, get uncomfortable, challenge yourself again, make some mistakes, and see what comes up next.
Nice.
Good stuff, mate. Well, listen, it's a great ride and it's a great story. And we did know that you'd do a good job of telling it, and you've delivered, my man. So, listen, thanks for taking time. We know you're at the sharp end of the season, mate, so it means a lot to us to spend a bit of time here on the Raw. Thanks for it, brother, and go well over these coming weeks, eh?
Thanks so much. And obviously, always really proud of home. Unlike some other people we've had on the show, I'd never lie about where I was from, and the Stags is still the number one team for me. So proud Southlander, and as I said, I sort of was really genuine and honest around, I think, the characteristics of what Southland is, and just want to say thanks to the three of you guys. Obviously, what you do for sport in our community, how you do celebrate it, how you grow it, because I think the coverage you give it, the way you celebrate it. You MC events, you make sure people are getting the really great stories about what we do. So thank you very much to you guys, and keep on doing a really great job.
Oh, you've nailed that, Jonesy.
Yeah, mate.
You're back on.
That's a mic drop situation. Good on you, mate. Thanks for your time.
Thanks heaps, Jones.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Cheers,
mate.
guys. See ya.